Your doctor prescribes a $200 pill. The identical $8 version sits on the same shelf. Why doesn't anyone tell you? The average American spends $1,432 per year on prescription drugs, and roughly $3,000 of family health care spending over a decade goes to brand-name medications when identical generic versions exist at a fraction of the price. The FDA requires generic drugs to have the same active ingredient, the same dosage, the same route of administration, and the same therapeutic effect as their brand-name counterparts. They are not similar. They are bioequivalent, meaning your body cannot tell the difference. Yet 72% of consumers still believe brand-name drugs work better than generics. That belief costs American households billions every year. And the pharmaceutical industry spends enormous resources making sure you keep believing it. Today I'm going to show you exactly how drug pricing works, why generics are identical, and the specific strategies that can save your family thousands of dollars every year on prescriptions you're already taking. Let's start with what the FDA actually requires for a generic drug to be approved. A generic must contain the same active ingredient as the brand name drug in the same concentration. It must be the same dosage form, whether that's a tablet, capsule, liquid, or injection. It must have the same route of administration, and it must meet the same quality, strength, and purity standards. The FDA's bioequivalence standard requires that the generic's absorption rate falls within 80% to 125% of the brand name drug. In practice, the actual difference averages just 3.5%. To put that in perspective, your blood pressure can vary by 10% to 15% between morning and evening just from normal daily fluctuation. A 3.5% difference in drug absorption is clinically meaningless. The FDA has approved more than 12,000 generic drugs through this process, and their internal reviews show that generics work identically to brand names in 99.7% of cases. Major medical organizations, including the American Medical Association, the World Health Organization, and the American Academy of Family Physicians, all endorse generic substitution as medically appropriate. The science is settled. The only thing that differs is the price. The price difference between generic and brand name drugs is staggering. Lipitor, the cholesterol medication, costs $400 per month for the brand name version. The generic, atorvastatin, costs $12 per month. That's a 97% savings. Nexium, the acid reflux drug, was $240 per month as brand name. The generic, esomeprazole, is $16 per month. Zoloft for depression was $350 per month. Sertraline, the generic, is $9 per month. This pattern holds across nearly every drug category. On average, generic drugs cost 80% to 85% less than their brand name equivalents. When the first generic competitor enters the market, prices typically drop by 20% to 30%. By the time 5 or more generic manufacturers are competing, prices fall 85% or more below the original brand price. The reason generics are so much cheaper is simple. Generic manufacturers don't need to spend $1 to $3 billion on the original research and development. They don't need to run massive clinical trials. And they don't need to fund the marketing campaigns that brand name companies spend $6 billion per year on. They just need to prove their version is bioequivalent. And competition among generic makers drives prices down further with every new entrant. Pharmaceutical companies use a sophisticated playbook to protect brand name pricing long after their scientific advantage has ended. The most common tactic is called pay for delay. Brand name manufacturers literally pay generic companies to delay launching their cheaper versions. The Federal Trade Commission found that these deals cost American consumers $3.5 billion per year in higher drug costs. Another strategy is patent evergreening. Companies make minor modifications to existing drugs, like changing from a tablet to a capsule or creating an extended release version, and file new patents that extend their market exclusivity for years. AstraZeneca did this with Prilosec. When the patent expired, they released Nexium, which is essentially the same molecule in a slightly different form. Nexium generated $72 billion in revenue over its lifetime. Authorized generics are another trick. Brand companies release their own generic version through a subsidiary, flooding the market before independent generic makers can launch. This lets them capture both the premium and budget segments while controlling the pricing narrative. And then there's direct-to-consumer advertising. The United States is one of only 2 countries that allow prescription drug advertising on television. Companies spend $6.6 billion annually on these ads specifically to create brand preference that overrides the generic equivalent. When a patient walks into a doctor's office asking for Lipitor by name, they're less likely to accept the $12 atorvastatin. Your doctor and pharmacist both play a role in whether you end up with the $200 pill or the $8 version. Most doctors genuinely want to prescribe the most cost-effective option, but pharmaceutical sales representatives visit physician offices an average of 11 times per month per practice, providing samples, meals, and clinical data all framed around brand name products. Studies show that doctors who receive meals from pharmaceutical companies are 70% more likely to prescribe brand name over generic alternatives. The good news is that every U.S. state has generic substitution laws. In 38 states, pharmacists can automatically substitute a generic unless the doctor specifically writes dispense as written or DAW on the prescription. In the remaining 12 states, pharmacists must ask for patient consent first, but are still encouraged to offer the switch. Here's what most people don't realize. If your doctor writes a prescription for a brand name drug, you can ask them to change it to the generic. If they refuse, ask why. In most cases, there is no medical reason. And if your pharmacist fills a brand name without offering the generic alternative, they may be violating state pharmacy regulations. Insurance companies also create confusion. Some formularies list brand name drugs at lower copay tiers than generics because of rebate deals with manufacturers. This means your insurance might actually charge you more for the generic, even though the cash price is lower. Always compare your copay to the generic cash price at discount pharmacies. Here are 6 specific strategies to maximize your savings on prescription drugs. First, always ask for the generic version of every prescription. Don't assume your pharmacy will automatically substitute. Tell your doctor you prefer generics and confirm with the pharmacist at pickup. Second, use GoodRx, RxSaver, or similar price comparison tools before filling any prescription. Generic drug prices vary by up to 1,000% between pharmacies in the same zip code. A 90-day supply of metformin can cost $4 at Costco and $45 at a nearby CVS. Third, consider Costco's pharmacy, even without a membership. Federal law requires Costco to allow non-members to use their pharmacy. Their generic prices are consistently 30% to 50% lower than chain pharmacies. Fourth, ask about $4 generic programs. Walmart, Kroger, and several other retailers offer hundreds of generic medications for $4 per 30-day supply or $10 for 90 days. These programs cover antibiotics, blood pressure medications, diabetes drugs, antidepressants, and more. Fifth, if a generic doesn't exist yet for your medication, ask your doctor about therapeutic alternatives. Different drugs in the same class often treat the same condition equally well. Switching from brand name Eliquis at $550 per month to generic warfarin at $4 per month could save you $6,552 per year, though this specific switch requires medical supervision. Sixth, for expensive specialty medications, check the manufacturer's patient assistance program. Most pharmaceutical companies offer copay cards or free medication programs for qualifying patients. AbbVie's program for Humira provides the drug free to uninsured patients meeting income requirements. What's the most expensive prescription you've been able to switch to a generic? Drop it in the comments because your experience could save someone else hundreds of dollars. If you want to learn how grocery stores manipulate your spending with layout psychology, check out this video next. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another smart shopping breakdown. See you in the next one.